Hey, hey, hey. Where'd that fucking go? Alright. Well, how are you guys doing this afternoon? Tired?
We're good. How about you?
Doing good. I know I'm a little tired, so, yeah. Just a long
Got me a
Sunday.
nap.
Got you now. I got one
That's
too.
what I need.
Yeah, Miss Betty was like, are we having the study? Yep. Alright, dude, how'd y'all's homework go?
I did it.
You did it.
Were you in the Sonic line doing it?
No, I did it. I got up early yesterday morning and did it.
Nice.
He said last week he was in the Sonic.
He better been lying, because he was fussing at me last week for not doing mine, but I had a migraine, so.
I did the extra questions in the Sonic lines.
Yeah. So how does it go for you guys? You guys enjoy that, not enjoy that? Especially the ones that aren't necessarily ones who like to just talk to random people?
Oh, well, I'll be honest, I didn't read that till Saturday, but I do that most of the time anyway.
Yeah,
to be
that's
honest.
just me. I normally, like, if I see somebody, I smile, you know, and say hi.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hard when I have on a mask, though, because I just smile at them, and they can't tell I'm smiling, and so they just kind of look at me like I'm weird.
Yeah.
Well, there's
No.
no like about it.
No, I get that, and I know for me, sometimes I'm like, especially in the store, I'm just like, alright, I don't wanna talk to anybody, let me just go do my thing, so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't go out of my way, but I'll, like, if I meet them,
Yeah, and but it is a lot different, so like, when you were doing it, like you said you naturally do it anyways, how about you, Miss Betty?
I'm pretty friendly to people.
Yeah. But it is, like, as it was saying in the homework assignment, like, it does kind of affect, like, how you even approach people in general, like, even maybe your attitude changes some, like, I know sometimes even as I was doing it this last week a little bit, I was like, yeah, it does change, like, if you're like, oh, hey, hi, how are you? It's a lot different than just walking out the bottom and just being like, don't talk to me. So, Lori Beth, you're in the middle, so I'm just like staring at you probably, looking,
Yeah,
making a lot of.
targeted.
So don't feel like you're targeted. I think it's just because you're in the middle. Alright, so. Point to ponder. Most of us are familiar with the concept of the friendship evangelism. This is the idea where we befriend someone and build a relationship with the person before we witness to him. But how long should we develop the relationship before we talk to him about God? As we considered previously, what will happen to your lost friend if he dies while you're taking the time to build a relationship? Notice there is no nice way to say it. He will go to hell for eternity if he dies without the Savior. He will end up in the lake of fire. So how can you even consider taking the risk by letting too much time pass? Here's an interesting thought about friendship evangelism. Who are the hardest people to witness to? Isn't it our unsaved relatives? Why is this? Perhaps it's because you witness to someone with whom you have a good relationship, and offend them, you risk losing that relationship. But if you witness to a stranger and you offend him, you haven't lost anything at all. So make it easier for yourself. Learn to witness to strangers. Make it a way of life to share the gospel with people you don't know. This will help encourage you to be bold, understand that you can develop a rapport and build a relationship with someone in 3 to 4 minutes if you care about the person's salvation. And once the door is open, then share the truth, knowing that the person to whom you are speaking may not have tomorrow. I guess that was an interesting thing to think about, as Ray Comfort mentioned, like, it doesn't take long to develop like the foundation of the relationship and stuff, or a friendship. So that was kind of interesting, and if that leads to, with sharing the gospel, that can lead to so much more of a relationship, friendship, and stuff between you and that person as well. But
In our first lesson, we talked about the tremendous moral responsibility that each of us as Christians have to seek and save the lost. We're like a good firefighter who cannot let himself become lazy or unconcerned or pretend that he doesn't realize that people are in danger. We know that 150,000 people die every 24 hours, most of them without Christ, facing eternity in hell.
And we looked at the wonderful God-given key, the 10 Commandments, the law of God that brings the knowledge of sin, opens the door of the human heart, and shows someone they've sinned against God and why they need a Savior.
Now, can you tell me what is the number one reason most Christians do not share their faith? It's a disgusting word. I don't even like saying it. You know what it is? Fear.
Perhaps you're like us and you have a battle with fear, and even now you're thinking to yourself, how did I get roped into doing this course? Well, what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of someone not liking us, a sense of rejection? Are we afraid of not having the right words to answer someone and feeling a little foolish?
Listen, if anyone understands what it's like to want people to like you, it's me. I mean, I've made my living off of it. My career and my livelihood as an actor depends on people liking me. But as a Christian, I know that I have a higher calling, and that is to please God by speaking the truth in love. And I know that sometimes that means I will displease men and women, and sometimes they won't like me because of it.
I battle with fear almost every time I go to witness to someone. Seriously, every little old lady I go to speak to, suddenly in my mind looks like this huge Goliath who wants to rip me in pieces and feed my flesh to the birds. And the problem is, I have an over-fertile imagination. But I've learned there are certain principles we can have to deal with these fears. And that's what we're going to look at in this episode.
All right, let's start by looking at something very interesting about these fears. How many of you in the room would like to try skydiving? Now please raise your hand up in the air so that everyone else can see your hand raised up. Okay, this is a very interesting experiment, so please do it. Put your hand up in the air if you'd like to try skydiving. Okay, now how many of you would like to try bungee jumping? Or how many of you have and love it? Put your hand up in the air, come on, raise them up. Okay, now how many of you like roller coasters? Hands up in the air. Please let everybody see your hand right now. And look around. See who's raising their hand. Now, what is it about these things that we like?
Nothing.
It's the love of that feeling of fear. It's the adrenaline rush.
A girl in our church tried skydiving. When her parachute became twisted, she fell to her death at the age of 17. A girl in California jumped with an instructor, and when their parachute became twisted, her friends heard her screaming as their bodies hit the ground. They felt it shudder 100 yards away. I saw a man on television try bungee jumping. His bungee snapped. Another one they showed where the bungee went into a loop, into a noose, and got caught around his neck. More than 50 people have died in recent years in the US on roller coaster rides.
Isn't it strange? We're prepared to put our lives on the line for the love of fear, and yet we're fearful to a point of paralysis when it comes to sharing our faith. When it comes to telling someone how they can find everlasting life. Well, that's crazy. So what's going on here? Well, the Bible tells us there are different kinds of fear. There is a fear that has torment, and that fear does not come from God. It's demonic. And that's the kind of fear that you and I will battle with every time we try to share our faith.
Do you remember in the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul was gathering sticks. He was building a fire, and when he picked up some sticks, the Bible says a viper fastened to his hand. The scriptures say Paul shook the beast off into the fire. And that's what you and I need to do with fear. When that viper fastens to our evangelistic hand, we need to learn to shake it off.
So how do we do that? How do we shake the beast of fear off of our hand? Well, the number one way to get rid of fear is to have compassion. In other words, learn to care more about the other person than you care about yourself.
Think about it. What's my worst case scenario? When I get a witness to someone, well, they could say, "Go away, you silly little man with a mustache." And I have a sense of rejection. But what's their worst case scenario? Well, they're going to spend eternity in the lake of fire. So what you and I need to do is develop a sense of compassion so that when we go up to someone, we forget about ourselves and we think about them and where they're going to spend eternity.
The second principle for overcoming fear is to let your fear become your strength. Let your fears work for you. Listen to this story. 2 frogs fell into a bowl of cream and got stuck. Now, one of the frogs said, "Oh, look at me, I'm stuck in this cream, I can't seem to get out. I think I'll just sink back down and die." The other frog said, "I will not croak in a bowl of cream." And so he began to kick his little legs and splash, and he flapped his little flippers, and you know what happened? The cream thickened to the point where it became hard butter, and he leaped out. I love this frog.
What you and I have got to learn to do is kick against fear, to fight against it, and it will eventually become a platform from which we can leap. Here's why. Our fears tend to make us pray. When I go to witness to someone, I'm thinking to myself, "Oh Lord, I'm so fearful. Please help me." So what happens is my fear actually becomes my strength because it drives me to my knees. And God said, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness." In fact, the Apostle Paul said, "When I'm weak, then I'm strong." So welcome your fears because they'll bring you to your knees. And every Christian knows that's where we get our strength.
You know, the hardest part for me about sharing my faith is always getting started. It's right at the beginning. It's when I'm wanting to bring up the subject of God. How do I do that without offending somebody or looking like a weirdo? Do you ever feel that way? Well, what if I could give you something that would take away all of the fear and tension for the first 60 seconds of bringing up the subject? What if it would break the ice and open the way for you to share your faith openly and honestly? And it would even make a person smile or laugh. And if you're a really shy person, it would even do the talking for you. Well, I've got it. Watch this. You like optical illusions? Which one looks longer, the pink or the blue? The pink or the blue? Are you sure? And the truth is, they're the exact same size. And I give these to people, and they usually say, "Oh, wow, thanks a lot. Do you have any more of these?" And I'll say, "Sure." And I'll give them to them and say, "Read the back. It has some interesting facts about your eyes, and it also has a gospel presentation." And they'll say, "Thanks." And one of the other things I love to give people to start a conversation is this great little booklet. And I tell people that a new study has come out, so they need to read it carefully. It's called "Everything Man Has Learned About Women." And they start to read it, and sure enough, as they read through the pages, they find there's nothing inside. And I tell them to make sure that they read the back cover because it has some more interesting facts about God. And people love these.
And this is my favorite.
Yeah.
This is a $1 million bill. Now, it's not counterfeit because there's no such thing as a $1 million bill.
But it looks real.
Well, if there was a $1 million bill, it would look like this. And on the back, it's got a gospel presentation. It begins with a $1 million question. And it's so easy to give out because people love money and they're fascinated by $1 million. So I just say, "Excuse me?" I say, "What?" "It's doing a great job. Keep the change." Or, "It's great when you get the change." So this is so easy to give out. I keep it in my wallet. And I'll just say, "Oh, just remember my face." And I show my picture in my wallet. I've got a stretched head, you may notice. Like. But it makes people laugh and makes them feel relaxed. And they say, "Are you a stand-up comedian?" I say, "Well, I'm standing up, but I'm really not a comedian." And then I say, "Well, this is where I'm from." And I give them a little card. It looks like a business card, and it's got across the top, "Department of Annoyance." I say, "I'm the director," and it says director. It makes people smile. I say, "Check the back." And they turn it over the back. As they begin to read the back, they turn it upside down. And it's actually written in reverse, the gospel presentation. So they have to take it to a mirror to read it. I say, "Is that annoying or what?"
I've seen it. It is annoying.
Yeah, but it's my little routine, and it makes me feel relaxed. I know where I'm going with it, and I know 99% of people I do that routine on laugh. They feel comfortable, I feel comfortable, and it gets gospel tracts into their hands.
You might also like to try the smart card. This is lots of fun. You tell them to put their thumb on the red square for 15 seconds, and if they're a good person, it'll turn a bluish green color. And you see people putting their thumb on it and they're going, "Okay, I'll try it. And then nothing happens. You flip it over on the back and it tells them that the dictionary definition of good is to be morally excellent. And they have a quick test to see if that's true of them. Or If someone tells you that, yeah, they'll think about God when they get around to it. Well, hand them this. It's around to it. Tell them to read the back when they get a chance. And then, if you're just too shy, you can simply drop your wallet. There's a personality analysis on the inside that shares the gospel as well.
Or perhaps you could use this one and say, excuse me, you couldn't change a large bill, could you? And on the back it has a gospel presentation. And be ready, because people will come and ask you for more. Or maybe you're not the humorous type. Well, you could use this one. It's an IQ test. It has these words, Paris in the spring, bird in the hand, once in a lifetime. And people read it as that, but it doesn't actually say that. It says Paris in the spring, bird in the hand, once in a lifetime. And they say, hey, try the back. And on the back there are 6 questions about God. And in a few moments, lightheartedly, you can find out exactly what a person believes about God, what they believe about eternity, and what they're trusting Him to be saved.
And the wonderful thing about these icebreakers is that they work on a 10-year-old kid or a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon. The reason is because not only are they funny or fascinating, but the back or the inside have words that are specially crafted to go around the intellect and speak directly to the conscience. That is the place of the knowledge of right and wrong. And that's what makes them so unique.
I was on a plane recently and I placed some $1 million bills in my shirt pocket. It's just the height for big businessmen sitting in the business class, so their eyes would fasten on the $1 million bill. Well, I'd just take one out and say, oh, would you like one? It's great when you get the change. I ended up giving out 30 of these $1 million bills as I walked down the plane because people heard the person in front getting excited about it. When I sat down the back, the flight attendant followed me down and said, there's a guy down the front wants one of those $1 million bills. So I gave her a handful and she turned around to the rest of the passengers and said, anyone else like one of these? And she started giving them out. And even during the flight, a lady came up to me and just pointed at my shirt pocket. She wanted one. These are wonderful. Instead of avoiding opportunities, I now look for opportunities because I've got these to help me.
And your group leader should have some of these icebreakers in the course that you're taking so that you can experiment with them. And if he or she doesn't have them, you can easily go to the website at wayofthemaster.com and get some for yourself. They're wonderful, and we highly recommend that you try them, because non-Christians will even ask you for more to take home to show their friends and family.
Activity. Alright, backward. Alright, so let's, if you guys can help pass out like 5 to each one. Yep, because you won't need it for your homework.
That's fine.
I think that's cute.
I like these. I put them on, I'm putting them on my desk at school, I think, so I can start.
Very good. What grade did you teach?
High school.
Oh, bless you.
Well, he would much rather have us.
Oh, yes, I don't want children. Jesus might love it, but Justin Hall loves him.
Oh gosh.
Live your pool. Work on yourself.
It does. I just want to know.
It only works on the lost honey.
No, I meant like, does it only work if you turn it this way?
Alright, did everyone get 5 of each one with the IQ test?
Yes, I counted those in.
That is crazy.
That is insane. Even if you turn them over, Justin. And they work on me, so.
They do work on you. Alright.
That's some trickery right
Yeah.
there.
Alright, so now we're gonna have a little fun.
Oh, good.
We will, not necessarily just break into pairs, but we'll just practice kind of doing those on, with each other and stuff. And so, everyone got You're doing a great job. You gotta keep up the change. I appreciate it. Okay, so turn to page 33. That is where I'm at. And each one is kind of a way to introduce each one, each little icebreaker. And so, so one of the, like the first one I've seen someone use that before. Did you get one of these? And it was just a little, it was actually just a little track and stuff, and like he would carry those around. And he would just be like, yeah, I'll just walk up to people and just be like, hey, did you get one of these? Because when someone hears that,
Makes
yeah,
you think everybody else has one, so you want one.
yeah, and so makes you, and then you're also curious as to what is this, and so that can draw some attention. Justin, what's the next one?
You're doing a great job today. Keep the change. Thanks, man.
Thank you. I've just got $1 million. Yeah, as you can see, it has which one? All right, Lori Beth, you want to do the next one?
Sure. It says, do you like optical illusions? Do you like optical illusions?
Not
Maybe.
good.
Or say, Divinity.
Well, look at this. Which card is bigger?
It's the blue.
The blue. What about now?
No. How?
Don't know. Here you go.
We're using witchcraft to spread the gospel.
My joke that you used.
It's
Everyone
not fair,
online,
y'all are
this is
teasing.
not witchcraft.
You get to do this stuff every day.
Yep. All right. Everyone online, this
No,
isn't witchcraft.
If we do this
isn't-
every day, we can.
All right, and then Miss Betty, do you want to do that last one?
Do you like IQ test? Try this one.
And then, so you just basically do those and just pat them out. And I know in there, and it talks about the IQ test, I believe is what it is. It can fit into credit card slots. I don't know. I understand some people, yeah, it's big enough to be able to fit in, like, so like you're at a gas station, you can put it in there. I've been up in the air a little bit about that, just because like some people would get really frustrated, and like as soon as they read it, then they're like turned away, just being like, oh, this is
You
stupid
can
that
put
they're
it
wasting my
like the
time.
handle at the gas station.
Yeah, so you could do some, like learning to put it in different places, and for the homework, it's gonna ask you to put certain things in places where people will find it. So like, that's where they were referencing, like putting it in a,
If you folded that up and put it in a credit card slot, they would think that's cool.
Or they would get very mad.
yeah.
Well, I mean, just not like, you know, just, you could do it
Yep,
a couple of times and stick it in there.
yep. All right, so. All right, it's telling me to instruct you to pay attention to the last witnessing conversation. Note the way Ray addresses the man's intellect, then his conscience. So, back to the video. Reflectivity over.
Once you learn to use an icebreaker to start a conversation, you're not going to be afraid. You're not going to get into an argument because you're going to address the conscience. And that's what we're going to teach you how to do in this episode called The Conscience. See and save the loss that which is a step. There's only a certain amount of time left. I lost time off. So use the ball. Use your head. Reach out to the boss. Reach out to the boss. There's nothing more important than your eternal salvation.
In a way, I try not to have a conscience because if I do, in a way, it kind of causes frustration. Really, it really does. Like, it causes frustration in a way. So that's why I try not to have one, and then just let things go easily and let things flow at the same time.
Do you always listen to your conscience?
No. No, I don't. But most of the time it's right.
Let me ask you this: do you like hearing from your conscience? Typically.
Typically. Well, I think it's welded to me so tightly that it's part of me, and I don't discriminate if I like it or don't like it. It's whether I listen or don't listen. I think so, because it speaks all the time.
What do you think conscience is? How would you define the human conscience?
You think conscience? Conscience is, I would define it as that lingering bell that doesn't allow you to forget whether you do wrong or right.
Have you been listening to your conscience lately?
Oh yeah, I was listening to it right now before you walked up.
Here's how the dictionary defines the conscience.
Conscience, the human faculty that enables one to decide between right and wrong acts of behavior, especially in regards to one's own conduct.
So, in everyday language, it's saying that the conscience is what helps us to know the difference between right and wrong, especially in terms of the things that we are doing ourselves. It's been described as the impartial judge in the courtroom of the mind. Or in other words, that witness that will stand up, not taking sides, but will always speak the truth.
As Christians, we often underestimate the conscience. It is so powerful it can drive someone to drink or even to suicide. The incredible thing is that God has given a conscience to every human being. The Bible says God has given light to every man, and it's true. You can go to the deepest, most primitive tribes of Africa and South America, people with bones through their nose and plates in their lip, and they have the conscience, the work of the law written on their hearts. They know it's wrong to lie and steal and commit adultery. The word conscience actually means with knowledge. Con with science, knowledge. So every time we lie, steal, lust, fornicate, blaspheme, we do it with knowledge that it's wrong. I once turned on the television to hear a chef say that he was going to sear a steak. So I immediately sat up because the Bible speaks of the conscience being seared as with a hot iron. That is, it's lost its life on the outside. So I watched closely what he was going to do. He took the steak and he put it on a hot plate. He left it for a moment and then he turned it. And he said, see this? It's seared on the outside, but watch this. And he took a sharp blade and cut into the steak and said, look, it is soft and tender on the inside. Perhaps you know someone who's hard on the outside. They say they don't agree with God's standards of right and wrong. Well, then take the sharp blade of God's law and cut deep into their conscience, and you'll find they're soft and tender on the inside. Deep within their heart, they know right from wrong.
So the question is, how do we speak to a person's conscience? How do we use the conscience to reach the lost? Think about this. If I were to say something to you like, listen to the voice of your conscience. Remember, God sees everything you've ever done. Now listen to what your conscience is telling you. That's a very powerful thing. The other way that we can speak to the conscience is by doing what Jesus did and take a person through the commandments.
I think so.
I mean, your conscience is a good thing?
I would say so.
How about you?
I mean, I think everyone does have like the devil and angel sitting at their shoulder.
You know right from wrong and you can sense both.
You have temptations.
Yeah.
So, I think your conscience helps you decide whether or not this is the right thing to do.
Right. Right. You guys heard the 10 Commandments?
Yes.
Okay. So you both said that you're a good person. So let's go through a couple of them.
Yes.
You have. Have you ever lied?
Yes.
Okay, so what does that make you?
I guess technically not a good person.
Well, maybe more specifically than that. If I told a lie, what would you call me?
Liar.
Ever.
Never know.
Is it possible you could have?
I have.
You have. Okay. The seventh commandment. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said by them of old time, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, whoever looks with lust